Let's get into it. My first is gonna go to the producer Dan.
Yes.
When you choosing subjects or and stories that affect people, why wrongful incarceration?
This is not something that I chose. This is something that chose me. It's like if you were alive in the 1930s and you go overseas and you stumbled upon Germany and you saw concentration camps, you would come back to America and you would say, you got to see what's happening over there. They're killing people for no reason. I was a witness from the front lines to what was happening to JJ and scores of other people. By the way, people who aren't even wrongfully convicted, people who did commit the crimes for which they were convicted. And what I saw is not what I believed growing up. What I saw was an irrational system that lacks any sort of human dignity. And so this became my calling because it wrapped it. I don't even have hobbies, man. Like this is something that I think about and work on every day for more than 2 decades.
And because there are now these, what we call them, internet sleuths that are out there that try to do things. What about your investigative reporting helps you get some results?
Well, first of all, the power of this docuseries that's airing this weekend on MSNBC at 9:00 on Saturday and Sunday night is a longitudinal view, meaning over 20 years of tape. You see JJ and I grow older. I'm not going to say old. Grow older together. And once I was in and I got to know JJ, and he introduced me to other people, and I started to understand the system more. This is something that I feel the need to educate. I'm an evangelist for this education, because what I've learned is about the urgent need for systemic reforms. This is not a story. It's way more than a story. This is a call to action. And my hope is that it challenges each listener, each viewer, not only to empathize with what they're saying, it's impossible for them not to, but also to engage, learn, become informed, become vocal advocates in your community. We got to push for policies that address systemic flaws, ensure access to fair trials, make sure that when someone is convicted, if evidence comes up afterwards showing they're clearly innocent, the system isn't allowed to ignore it. This is an epidemic. It's a major issue. And in a time where many people feel like the world is in chaos, this is civic discussion and action at its best. And that's why people really need to tune in and understand what's at stake. We need to channel this outrage into change.
Your series director was Dawn Porter. What did she bring to the table in part of the storytelling?
I mean, Dawn is amazing. I mean, she's, first of all, she's a person of color, which is very important, I think, because this system disproportionately affects people of color. Second, she's a lawyer. Third, she's an incredible artist and filmmaker. And her name is very elegant in the world of documentary filmmaking. I mean, she's made a film about John Lewis. She has one in theaters now about Luther Vandross. She's working on one about Nelson Mandela. So it makes perfect sense to me. And I don't say this lightly. She's doing a documentary about Nelson Mandela. It makes perfect sense to me that she'd want to do JJ's story, because to me, he is my Nelson Mandela.
Switching over to JJ. Sir, can you testify to how much patience that you had to have to let this process play out?
Wow. All the patience that I can muster, I'm still dealing with it. I mean, the reality is that, when this case first came to my understanding, I was a child. I thought I was a man. I just turned 22 years old, but I really didn't have a grasp of what I was going to get myself involved in throughout this journey. But coming out of it, one thing that I can say is that a lot of us, you know, we look at situations that take place in the world and we say, wow, I can't, I wouldn't be able to do that. And the truth is that some people can't. But the majority of us really don't understand how much strength we do have, how much reserve we do have as human beings. And so what I'm saying is that we never know how much we can handle until it's put in front of us. And we can usually handle a lot more than we can fathom. And so, you know, I'm not trying to say that this was easy or that, you know, my soul wasn't tormented by all of these years of madness. But what I'm saying is that the human resolve is much stronger than a lot of us care to believe. And that's what we have to do. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe in our strength. We have to believe in our fortitude to get through whatever situations come our way. Because we can't control everything that comes our way. And so, you know, we get caught up in these circumstances where we try to control what happens to us. And we have to understand that we can't control what happens to us. What we can control is how we respond to what happens to us. And that's where our strength comes from. That's where our resilience comes from.
What was it? How does it feel to have someone in your corner knowing that they're out there fighting for you every step of the way?
That's a great question because that's a big part of it. I believe that if people would have given up on me while I was inside, I probably would have given up on myself. So to have people like my mother who never gave up on me, that's what kept me going throughout this entirety. And then to have an individual like Dan, who is not my own blood, who had no reason to really care other than the fact that this is a human issue, right? And that anybody who is confronted with the reality of it should care, right? And so Dan was able to make me believe in humanity again by seeing a person who didn't have an obligation allow my situation to consume his every thought for 20 years until he was able to actually help get me out. And even after that, we were both still fighting for the same truth and same justice. And I was just exonerated not too long ago, but the fight continues because there are hundreds of thousands of people who are wrongfully convicted and wishing that they had what I had in terms of support, in terms of the ability to fight, because everybody doesn't have that either.
I mean, you listen to JJ talk, you hear how emotionally intelligent and intelligent he is. He is clearly innocent. Anybody who takes the time to look at the details of his case, which you'll see in the series, who are intellectually honest, can only come to one conclusion. And what's so troubling about that, and he had never been convicted of a crime before. For everybody who's listening, say, oh, he must have done something else. No, he had never been convicted of a crime before. JJ had a lot of people fighting for him. He had an hour on Dateline that proved his innocence in 2012 on national TV. He was the focus of Letters from Sing Sing, which was a Pulitzer finalist podcast. I wrote a book called The Sing Sing Files about JJ and the other guys he led me to. There's a docuseries. The President of the United States apologized to JJ in person in the White House. The reason that I'm saying all of that is to piggyback on what Jay just said, that if it takes all of that to get him exonerated 27 years later, God help everybody else behind him, because they don't have what he had, especially his brain.
Well, I commend you, gentlemen, for all the hard work. Thank you so much for your time, Dan and JJ.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Jose. Appreciate you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.